Hello, and welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following me on my journey. A lot of people have asked about Indian pens. I don't review a lot of them. So I saw this on Etsy. Here was the auction and felt it was an excellent price. Had a cursive italic nib, which I have tried the Kiwipens and some Pen BBS pens, and I've enjoyed it, so I pulled the trigger and purchased it. And it took a little bit of time to get here, and the tracking wasn't very good, but the communications with Saji was excellent, and the pen did eventually arrive safe and sound for my enjoyment. And it arrived via India Post, and it had the typical customs declaration on the other side. This is my second purchase directly from Kiwipens on Etsy. Always get a nice note, and based on the way the letters look, I would say they were written with a cursive italic nib that was sent with me with the pen, and they do just call it a handmade Ebonite eyedropper fountain pen with cursive italic nib, and one free pen, which is also very typical of purchases made in India. And as you can see, it's signed, dated, and it's just nice to get a personalized note. And here we see the Ebonite pen and the free pen that was included, and also this nice velvet pen pouch, and it is red. You may have seen this in another video where I wanted to get a nice red color. So let's take a quick look at the free pen before we dive into the Ebonite one, which is the main focus of our video. It's a Mantex, not familiar with that brand. It's labeled in a few places, or Montex. The gold line pen, and you have a barcode on there very similar to that you might have on a Preppy. And you may ask why I say that. We'll see that in a second. Interesting design cap there with this finial that's clear but looks dark because it's over the dark part of the cap. It's a pull-off cap, and we'll see. It looks like a Pilot Varsity, similar to that clear section. A lot of fins there. I'm assuming this might be one of those capillary feed systems. And there's that cartridge that was mentioned in the letter. That opening looks similar to a Pilot. You know, so if I wanted to use this regularly, I might use a converter in it. But for the time being, I'll just leave it as is. I'm certain it'll write well like a Pilot writes, the Pilot Varsity writes. So we'll set that aside and look at the main draw. First impressions is I'm impressed. This just looks good, feels good, a great size. You know, that's good Ebonite, good ripple Ebonite. Very well done. Very nice finishing. I mean, I say that a lot. And the clip is fine. Nice and functional, not too stiff, a little bit of springiness to it. Could have had a little bit of bigger upturn to get under thicker fabric, but cap takes about 2.5 turns to get off, and we'll see a nice section. Same ripple Ebonite as the rest of the pen, which I really like. An Ebonite feed and that cursive italic nib, which is ground. Nice thick walls. It fits fine in the hand, unposted. It's fairly light, which Ebonite pens are known for being lightweight. And it looks like it might post pretty well with the way that back of the cap is turned, but I think they have the same designers that Pen BBS uses, because the cap doesn't post, and it makes for a very, very long pen. You do feel that even though it is fairly light cap. I'm not going to push it on too much because there's no cap band or anything. So, and I would probably not use this pen posted. So here's the Kiwi pen taken apart. As much as I'm going to disassemble it. It is an eyedropper, as we mentioned, with a nice ebonite feed, nice ebonite section with the ripple section, which I love, matches cap and barrel. And hopefully you can see that channel in there, which is pretty deep. Now it looks like a classic vintage feed from this side. And I'm assuming that nib was set properly and everything else. I did flush it, so that's good. Yeah, it's a nice thick wall on the ebonite. Yeah, it's not going to be a heavy material. It's not known for that quality. But it certainly does look good and feel good in the hand, as you expect ebonite to. It's time for the LED. I just have some very diffused sunlight coming in. We'll bring in the LED. Doesn't really work that well with this ripple ebonite as it does with some of those pearlescence acrylics. If we look inside the barrel, we'll see a nice ledge that machined in there, which seats up against the section. So that gives a very small area there at the bottom of the cap, which should keep the nib fairly wet. You get to see what the ebonite looks like without polish. It looks okay. So what to compare the Kiwi pen to? Well, we're going to make the first showing of my M8 in gold foil. My third attempt finally succeeded in getting one delivered, but at a little bit of an upcharge in the price. Here's a Ranga Model 3 in a matte finish in a green ripple. And diminutive in its own way is a Pilot Metropolitan. And just put things in perspective. This is a big pen. The Ranga Model 3 is a big pen. The Moonman M8 is a big pen. So it's a big pen. So uncapped, the Kiwi pen holds its own amongst this group of slightly larger than normal pens, with the Pilot Metropolitan in a distant last finish. I posted the Metropolitan because I would write with it posted. The other pens I would not. Let's zoom in on the business end. All the three larger pens have a robust section. The Ranga Model 3 has the smallest one, but only by a little bit. Forget the Metropolitan, is not in the ballpark. All these have fairly large number 6 nibs on it. The Ranga, I wanted a Bach nib, so I put a little bit extra money into it. Nice two-tone Bach nib. And of course, that's the Moonman, labeled fine, but writes more like a medium. And the Kiwi pen's cursive italic, which I enjoy in this pen, as we will see in my writing sample. So what ink to put into the Kiwi pen? Well, I ordered Pen BBS inks from Taboo Focus. No, I'll never pronounce it correctly. So this ink struck my fancy. Who could turn down Burning White House? The War of 1812. This is a great bottle. It's the large size bottle. And it's number 153. They do go by numbers. And it's 60 milliliters, so it's a good size. So I got 9 bottles of Pen BBS inks of various sizes, and we'll see them over the course of the next couple weeks. And I may do a video on all of them, but we'll see. I just enjoy using them in pens. So here's the color card. And there's the big splotch. I mean, the thing that I look at in the color of this ink is it looks like ash. They did a great way of showing when you burn something, you have this ash, which is a dark gray color. And maybe you can see a little bit of that gold glitter, because this ink has gold glitter in it. The chromatography is also very interesting. And there's a little bit of gold glitter there at the very bottom. And then you have this incredible, kind of like a ochre, not an ochre, but kind of like a beige, kind of like then into a dark blue, and eventually ending up with this very brilliant blue at the very top. I'm impressed with the chromatography. Let's see how it works in the pen. So Chris, you say gold glitter, and I say yes, gold glitter. Look at that at the bottom of the bottle. So if you shake it up, you'll see it goes into suspension. And of course, before I would ink up any pen, I would shake this up to get those gold nanoparticles equally distributed within this great ink. Before we write, I just wanted to show you this example of the gold glitter seems to stay on top of the paper when the ink soaks in. So I'm impressed. This is my first gold glitter ink, and I think it works great. And they picked a nice dark ink color that really complements the gold. So we're ready for that all-important how does it write part of the video. I like this pen. I like this pen a lot. And it's alike on many levels. I like the size, I like the finish, I like that Ripple Ebonite. How could you not like Ripple Ebonite? You know, that clip is done well. I mean, there's nothing to really fault this pen with. And considering it was about $25 delivered, it's a great buy. Let's just take off the cap. A little bit of turns, but I'm not concerned about that. It just feels good in the hand. Ebonite is always a good feeling in the hand. And again, that size is just right. And it's not a pen that's designed for posting. It's just too long, and it does back weight a little bit. I mean, you could use it posted. It doesn't really stick very well, and I'm not going to jam it on there because I'm not going to do that. I love it the way it looks, and I don't want to put any undue stress on that. I don't think Ebonite's the best thing you want to put into tension. Compression, it probably works a little bit better. I just like the way that Ripple looks. We'll give you the dimensions of the section. We'll give you the weight of the pen. Like I said, it's light. And writing with it this way, you could write with it for hours. It's certainly the right size section for me. You don't feel those threads, and yes, there's a little step up, but you know, it's not going to stop you from holding that pen wherever you want to. So hopefully you've heard how smooth this nib is. It is very wet, which to me is exactly what I'd hoped for when using this ink in this pen. So I need to have a little discussion about ground nibs. So that nib has a little bit of a left oblique. So the thing with the left oblique is Mike Massiamo described to me is if you look at the nib, it leans this way. So if you're looking at it from the top of the nib, it leans to the left, and that's a left oblique. I know they call this a cursive italic, and that is more of a generic description in my view of the pen world. I put about 3 milliliters of ink in here, and it could have taken a couple more milliliters, so you can certainly fill this pen up if that's what you would like to do. If you notice how I'm holding the nib, this is the right angle. So if you hold it like this, it's not going to be as pleasant, and it's not going to be as consistent writer. So I've had this pen inked up for about a day, and every time I use it, it writes a little better. The flow is great. I haven't carried it around. I haven't put it through any of its paces, but based on the write-up, I expect this pen to survive as good as any eyedropper I've ever used. So now we're going to rate this pen. I'm going to give it a 9.7. 1 check for the nib, 2 checks for the way it looks, the way it's made, the way it's put together. It's just a beautiful ebonite pen, and for the price, I'm going to give it 3 checks for value. It's a great pen. Unfortunately, on Etsy, I don't see this pen anymore. I see other pens from Kiwipens, which are a little bit more money, but I'm certain would be equally enjoyable for you, if that's what you would like. And at this price, for an ebonite pen of this quality, it hits it out of the ballpark, probably across the county, maybe the state. I thought it would be good to show that gold sheen on some writing that you saw me put down. The sheen shows up after the ink is dried, which I think is typical of glitter style inks, and it's not that in your face. It's kind of subtle, but when you really hit at that angle, there is that metallic sheen. So to show you how versatile this nib is, here's my 480 that I put the cursive italic nib in. And for those of you that may not know, 480 is a Pen BBS model. So the 480 is a great pen by Pen BBS. And there's that nib with that little bit of a left oblique grind to it. And it also works well in this Pen BBS 480. Not quite as wet as it is, but that's the ebonite feed with that nice channel in it. I mean, it keeps up with writing. You can see that if you come down at that angle that's equal to the grind, you get a much wider line, and if you go against it, you get a much finer line. So the nib works. I can't find this nib anymore for sale on Etsy, but I'm certain if you ping Kiwipens and if you're interested in the nib, let them know, and maybe there might be an opportunity for you to have one. So I've reached the end of this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed a pen as much as I have. And this, as you can see from the ebonite feed, which puts out a lot more ink than the Pen BBS feed, how much darker and more dense those lines are that are at the angle that the nib is ground versus the... You still get those very fine lines, but you can also get a deeper line. As you can see, writing over the camera, it's hard for me to catch that angle. So writing with a nib like this requires practice, requires patience, and requires a steady hand. And this ink is just blowing me away. I'm just impressed. So I've reached the end of this video. Thank you for watching. May you find a pen that really floats your boat and brings home the bacon and makes you feel happy. Because that's, to me, is the purpose of life. And then once you feel happy, you can hopefully help those around you feel happy. And we're going to work on bringing happiness to everybody. So this is the end of the video that we're looking at now. And we're going to say bye until the next video. And I'm really impressed that I found a new pen and nib to work with.